Hey everybody, it's Gina here from Gina Makes It. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another journal with me. In today's video, I am continuing on my autumn nature journaling in my autumn journal, and I am documenting a recent trip my husband and I took to a local forest preserve where we did a little bit of hiking in the rain. It was a little bit slower paced, a little bit more introspective with what was going on around us. So I am using one of these little autumn journal cards that I created in my last video. If you missed that, I will link that down below for you so you can take a look. And also I'll also list the Etsy listing for some of these that I have put in my store. There are a few left. Instead of using it as a journaling card, I decided to create a pocket out of it. I really liked the way the green looked, the green fabric looked on top of the vintage quilt that I have on the inside. So this signature is the middle signature of my journal, and it is made out of a vintage quilt. I have a few of these kits also in my Etsy store and a few of these squares for sale in my Etsy store in case you are interested in adding these to your journal. So I thought that this whole middle section, which is the middle signature, will serve as the portion that I'll use to document it. So I have some old, very old magazine pages. It's kind of a tabloid size, so it folds out. And I thought that I would just use this whole section to document this trip. And then I'll move into my third signature, which will be used to document the month of November. So I printed out all of my pictures the same size because I wanted to create like a uniform sort of feel with the pictures. And this is the only one that is landscape. The rest of them are a portrait. At first I wanted them all to be portrait, but I really liked the way that one looked landscape, so I decided just to do it and to stop trying to be so rigid with all of my rules. So I didn't really know the direction that I wanted to take with these pages. I did a lot of collecting of leaves when we did go, and I had dried them with like my heat gun just to get some of the wetness out of them. And so I decided to use them in conjunction with the pictures. And so instead of like framing the pictures with some sort of a background, I thought that I would just glue the pictures down and then add some of the items from the forest that I collected along the way. So for this first one, well, actually this is the second one because I already glued two down. So for the first one on that first page, it's just a picture of my husband kind of looking at the map to see like where we were going to go and what trails we were going to do. And I added a little yellow leaf to that one. And then the second one, which was landscape, I haven't added anything to it. And actually I don't end up adding any leaves to it or anything to it other than some words from my Autumn Sentiments printable. And for this one, I am adding these 3 red leaves because I really like the way the red looked with the berries in the picture. So I'm moving on to the middle portion of the signature, and I really wanted to use these two pictures together because one shows like the steepness of the path that we were taking, and then the other one shows my husband at the top of it, looking down, waiting for me to try and make my way up. So I end up switching the order of these pictures because that was like the order that I took them. First I took the picture of the path, and then I took him on top of it. And I decided that I wanted to make him into a pocket to do a little bit of journaling about what exactly I just said about how steep it was and how he went up there and just sort of that whole part of the hike. So I am just kind of figuring out how I'm going to do my journaling and how it's going to fit. I have this piece of vintage cursive practice paper that I believe I'm going to use because I like the way that it looks against the magazine pages and against the pictures. And I also decided that I was going to use this big brown leaf in conjunction with the picture on the left, which I had switched, which is just the path of the trail itself. So I go ahead and I add some glue to the top, the left, and the bottom of the picture to create the pocket, and then I spent some time trying to get this to fit. So I have a piece of white, just scrap paper that I'm using just to make sure that I have a clear path. And once I feel that it is sufficiently cleared and ready to go, I start my journaling. Next, I decide to add the picture to the adjacent page with that big brown leaf to the side of it, and that's all that I do to this page. After I finish with this, I realized as I was doing the journaling for the other page that I never really did any sort of introductory journaling or kind of a like summary journaling. So I decide to use this little piece of sheet music that came out of like an old Girl Scout handbook, and it's called the hiking song. And so I thought it was pretty appropriate for this layout. And once again, I'm having like real issues this time with fitting things inside of pockets. It's just because the materials I'm using are very thin because they are very old. So I keep trimming it, but then I end up backing it on a piece of coffee dyed cardstock, gluing it on there, and then I turn it the other way so it's landscape, and I actually like it better that way in the pocket because you can see the words, the hiking song, sticking out. And once I do that, I do some overall journaling. I pull out some of the words that are from my Autumn Sentiments printable, which is in my Etsy store. I printed this on some coffee dyed paper, and I also printed a sheet on just regular white paper, which I use both in this journaling session. And I decided that I wanted to add this saying that says, "Life starts all over again when it gets crisp in the fall." I just thought that it really filled this page well, and it also kind of summed up the sentiments of this picture of this leaf, which is the same leaf that you saw in the opening of this video. So I cut it out and trim it, and then I do a little bit of sewing underneath it, and then I put one side on the left and I do one at the top, and then I decide that it still needed something with a little bit of texture to it. And so I have a little scrap piece of crocheted lace that I actually coffee dyed as well, and it really added a little bit of interest and texture to the top of it. And so I get another piece of it and I trim the top and I add it to the side as well. I wasn't very happy with the way that journaling fit inside of that pocket or looked, so I decided to glue it to a piece of coffee dyed scrapbook paper, which is like this maroon colored scrapbook paper, and kind of add a border around it. And not only did it give it a little bit of stability, but it also added a little bit of color that it needed, because there was just too much of the same neutral color kind of going on that page that it just needed a little bit of depth added to it. So now I am moving on to another little flip out page here, and I decide to add this yellow leaf to the side of this picture of this tree with this vine wrapped around it. And at first I was going to do it that way, but then when I flipped it over, I really liked the underside of the leaf. You could really see the veins, and it fit much better with the shape of the picture and where the tree was situated, and so I decided to glue it down upside down. I decided to utilize these autumn sentiments that I had because they were there, and so that was the whole purpose of them. I had mentioned in the video on Friday where I talk about why I created these, that I made them because I felt like I was scrambling around my craft room too much looking for words that matched the feeling or the tone of the page. And instead of trying to scramble and do that, I thought that I would just create a printout that had all of the words that I knew that I would kind of want for this type of journaling. And it really did help time-wise, and it really added a lot to the page. So you could see that was a white piece of paper, and I just did a little bit of distress ink over it, and it really kind of antiqued it up. And so that little sentiment just said falling leaves because I had picked that leaf up off the ground. Speaking of falling leaves, I decided to add this leaf to the beginning of the signature just because it was an empty page and I thought it would look nice against that book page. And I also decided to add this one to the end of the signature, which at the end I end up decorating a little bit more with some more of those sentiments from that printable. But for now, I'm going to move on to my mushrooms. I have two pictures of mushrooms that I want to add to these last two panels. And I decided to create sort of a montage of leaves on this left-hand panel. At first, I was thinking of creating a pocket with that big leaf, but I thought that was kind of boring and kind of predictable. So as I was trying to figure out where to put it, I just started layering the leaves, and then I sandwiched the picture of one of the mushrooms next to them, and I really liked the way it looked, and so I just kind of kept going, and I was trying to put caution to the wind and just kind of glue and plop, and I'm glad I did it because I really like the effect that it made. I added a few more of those sentiments to some other pictures, and now I am going to work on this final panel. And to this panel, I'm going to add this last picture of mushrooms that I have. And so I decide to glue it down on the left-hand side of the page and do a little bit of journaling to talk about the mushrooms a little bit. I have a piece of coffee dyed file folder that I ripped the bottom off of, and I decide to staple one of the sentiments to the top before I do my journaling that says forest study. And then I do a little bit of journaling about our little mushroom quest. Once I have that glued down, I decide to glue these little leaves down on the stem on this last and final page, which is the inside cover of that vintage quilt square. And instead of adding a picture or doing anything like that, I decide to add one of the sentiments that comes from Anne of Green Gables, and it's a very famous saying that you see a lot on October 1st on the internet, and it says, "I'm so glad I live in a world where there are Octobers." And so because this is probably the last entry in my journal for October, I thought that it was the perfect addition to this page. I'm just trying to figure out how I want to add it, if I want to change the leaves around, and I do entirely too much fussing with these leaves that I do not show you because it's absolutely agonizing before I decide where I eventually put everything. And so after I cut these up and I get everything situated, I do a little bit of sewing and then I glue them down. I have to say I really enjoy working in this journal, and I feel like I say this every time I'm working in a journal, is that I really like that journal the best. And I have to say I really do like this journal a lot. It is just really the epitome of what I'm sort of living in my life right now, and I just find that alignment so incredibly satisfying. As always, thanks so much for watching my little YouTube channel and supporting my Etsy store. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you next time.